Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
Brought her in from the Texas Medical Center, and we would do this comprehensive evaluation. I would skill them in 2 or 3 modalities. I'd get them into therapy. If anything, it kept them active. It kept different things going, and that's when I made that home start generating money. And but it is that is a mind-numbing, you're going to have a real love, a real service-minded heart, and service-minded mind to do that job well. And so I did that one at that facility until that company, that chain, filed bankruptcy.
Wow.
And when they filed bankruptcy, I went to a nursing home convention. A recruiter from another big chain then said, "Hey, why don't you come to Beaumont? We have a home in need of an administrator." At that time, I was the youngest nursing home administrator in the state of Texas, at least practicing.
Yeah.
28, 29, 30, maybe right in there.
Wow.
Most of these people were old and crusty, holding on to their license, and or had been grandfathered in before they had to be licensed. A lot of them no degrees in it. Not that that's even important, but they had fallen into that 20 something, 30 years ago, and now they were administrators. But so I come to run that facility, and I did that, ran that one, and that's what moved us over to where we live now.
Okay.
My wife had finished her degree, then went on to get her master's degree, but she was on the acute care side of the house. So as the Lord would have it, I got that home offered to me in Beaumont. She got offered to be the director of materials management at a big hospital here.
Okay.
And so we're both in it, just on different sides of the house. And I ran that one up until when I had my bookkeeper go deliver some physician's orders for us. She got in a wreck. In the course of doing so, got hurt. Her husband was a refinery worker. They had 2 kids. He was out of work at that time. And they denied her medical claim, our insurance medical claim, meaning our own company. And so she's going to have to foot the bill. Well, what does Eric do? I've been fighting my whole life. So I went to bat for him and got in a fight with corporate counsel over, I'm not going to name the company. They've already filed bankruptcy 2 times and started under new names.
Wow.
But I didn't win the fight with corporate counsel, and they fired me.
Yeah.
And so that probably was, it didn't matter, Mike. I mean, that was probably my greatest gift, because I think I've already shown you a predisposition to kind of want to do things my own way. And that's when I fell into chasing guys and equipment all over the country for the last 20 something years.
So talk about that for a second, because you basically, so you go to bat for the bookkeeper, right? And they end up firing you over it.
Yep.
Which, as it turns out, and is a huge blessing. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, looking back, of course, right? Hindsight being 2020.
Yeah.
How do you get from running, just imagine this, right? You're running these homes.
Yeah.
You're the youngest guy in Texas doing it. You get fired. And then how do you end up chasing assets? Like, how do you end up, I mean, just walk us through that process. How does that happen?
Yeah. I had an uncle. I was not close to him in any way, shape, or form. This was my mom's brother.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, I already told you what kind of happened in my childhood. And I mean, I can't really speak to it because I understand it better now.
Yeah.
But my mom had 2 brothers. She didn't have any contact with them,
Right.
had some form of disdain for her own parents. Those were the grandparents that helped me.
Right.
So I did not have a relationship with this guy. I had seen him growing up a few times. But I knew that he lived in another town. Now, granted, we'd moved to Beaumont.
Right.
So now I was closer to where he was actually living. And he had a big tow company.
Okay.
And so he reached out to me, and he knew what I did at that time. And he had been a CPA and a healthcare accountant way back when, a whole other story. But he understood what I was doing, and he knew it's a transitory job. Administrators often move and go run new facilities. He's like, well, Eric, until you figure out where you're going, why don't you come cool your heels with me? And I'm like, okay, I can make that kind of short, kind of long commute and see what it's all about. Well, during the course of that, since he had that infrastructure already in place, lenders, meaning financial institutions, had been calling him to see if someone wants to give their equipment back, meaning voluntarily, will he go pick it up?
Right.
Well, sure. So he was doing that. What I didn't know is that he was going through a nasty, nasty divorce. And dude really didn't want a discernible form of income. For one, you can say, hey, that's a travesty, and it is. Or you can say, because of all that, his head really wasn't in the game, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And really what he wanted was someone that he believed was competent. And he thought because we have this blood that I'd come in there and shore everything up for him and make it great. And you know what? I did, because I'm still in the mode of validating my own self through effort and proving that I'm good enough.
Right.
Still in that quest. And for a man, and still a young man, yeah, you're going to show that you're better or you're different. That's the only way you define yourself. So these lenders were making that call, but then they're like, hey, what if the dudes don't want to give the stuff back?
Right.
You think you can go get it? Sure, let's try it out. All right. So got going on that. That was going pretty good. I cleaned up all kinds of accounts for him. Basically shooed him away and said, look, we'll do this. Keep your books. Take care of all this. I've got everything out in the field. And by then it started really happening. Now, we made a financial agreement. And you got to realize I had went from that young age at that time, which was a ways back. It may be nothing in California money, but 6 figures in Texas at that time was a lot of money.
Oh, sure.
But now I'm getting paid nothing, and I'm living out on the road and taking care of all this stuff for him. And so finally, my wife and I went and met with him, pretty much begged him to fulfill what we had discussed on compensation. He wasn't willing to do it. And I invited him over for that coming up Thanksgiving dinner, and brought him in. And after everyone was full and satiated and kind of left except him, I said, look, man, we're either going to break this down. I can help you grow. This is all I'm asking for. Or I'm going off on my own. And because I realized I was good at that and I knew I could do it. And he balked. He said he wasn't going to do it. And I thought, well, geez, this will be easy. These people that we are working with currently will certainly use them. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't know he'd be spiteful, pick up the phone and tell them to never use me. And so that happened. He moved along his way personally, shut down his doors, which I knew was happening. He didn't have anyone to do the work anymore. And he sure didn't want to have to give that to. So I sat there in limbo and I'm like, what in the world? But the saving grace there was they had never been able to get any equipment picked up in Louisiana, Mike, because that was still under, when it came to commercial equipment, meaning big farm implement equipment, yellow iron, construction equipment, class 8, meaning tractors, trailers, 18-wheelers.
Yeah.
It still was under Napoleonic law, meaning you couldn't go like everywhere else we worked, which was in a self-help environment, meaning you have a civil contract. If you fall behind, we just go and, I could just go in, garner entry, hot wire the tractor, drive off. In Louisiana, you had to get in front of these people or find them, get them to sign what's called a state of Louisiana voluntary release and personal property receipt, meaning they agree to waive all their rights to said piece of collateral. They agree to be sued for the deficiency, meaning once the lender brings it back, sells it at fair market value, applies it to what was already owed. If they still owe money on it at that time after the sale, they're going to be sued for that. And so no one had been any good at getting these releases signed.
Right.
Well, I'd already started in Louisiana, and I'm like, okay. So I sat there for like about a month and a half after all this happened, and my phone rings. It's this dude from, at that time, Mercedes-Benz Commercial Credit, which is now Daimler Truck Financial. And people don't realize that Mercedes-Benz owns Freightliner Truck, Travel Centers of America, truck stops, all that stuff. He's like, Eric, if I use you and I was told not to, do you think you can take care of Louisiana? I'm like, I already showed you I could. And I'm like, you're going by someone's information that hadn't done it one damn time. So let's go. So, I mean, that's when you learn about juggling credit cards, because it's going to be a while before you get paid and you got to be operational. And that's what I did. And, ran up a hellified bill on about 4 credit cards until my my receivables started coming in, because I was really, really successful at doing it. And definitely not just there, but my given territory, which expanded to Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, some in New Mexico, some in Oklahoma. And Louisiana, for sure, no one picked up more commercial equipment than I did for that client, which morphed into others. During it went full bore, I'd probably pick up, just in Louisiana alone, 25 trucks and trailers, probably every week and a half, Mike, just in Louisiana. Now I was covering other territories too, and deliver those to Jackson, Mississippi, sometimes Fort Worth or Memphis, Tennessee. And that's what broke it open. I had the ability to deal with all those people. Didn't matter if they were rural. It didn't matter if you were in the Devil's Backbone in friggin' New Orleans. And that continued at that feverish clip up until when Harvey hit. Hurricane Harvey, Katrina.
Right.
Yeah, Katrina, that decimated New Orleans. And but yeah, that's what got me into it. And I was running those other states, and then at different clients' behest. I was so busy, Mike. By then we'd had our daughter, and I knew that, hell, my marriage, and how was that going to work if I was never home? And here I was, it's like an athlete, to be honest with you. And there's so much involved. The chance of every day was dangerous. Just being on the road's dangerous, but going into places, taking equipment out from under people. And at that time, if you gave me the assignment, yes, military stuff, I was still very tactical at that time. I probably honed those skills much better with just the baseline they had provided me. But the streets taught me everything else. But if someone gave me an assignment, you always lost your equipment. Now, if you could get paid up or paid off before I found it or found you, good for you. But I never gave you a chance to even breathe. And because I wanted to show I was the best in that industry, and we were competing against some really monolithic clients. And but then, whether it was financial security, emotional maturity, you had already seen the dregs of life by then. I started having a heart and negotiating with people. And so yeah, for 2 years there, I bought a big RV, and even though we had a couple of rent houses at that time, our own personal residence, I took my wife and our daughter on the road before she had to start kindergarten. And that, I mean, those two repossessed more commercial equipment than the people who at that time who professed to do it. And because during those years, no one put their hands on more stuff, got in, hot wired, and drove it away than this idiot in front of you. And that morphed into clients saying, we really want you to cover the nation in its entirety. But I was scared for one, I was dumb for two. I was like, it was so entrenched to do that work. It required so much of you. I was like, how is someone going to replicate me or that somewhere else? So I bought. But then this one client of mine who I'd really gotten a good relationship with, it's like, Eric, what would it take for you to do this? And that was Key Equipment Finance. So Key Bank out of Ohio at that time. I'm like, you know what? In order to get me to do that, and I put a number out there, I was already at the top tier of how they compensated people in my business. But I threw out this crazy number, one, because I was afraid to have to try to do that work. And so part of me didn't think they would do it, but they agreed. And they agreed. And so then I went from the assignments that I handled myself personally to about 150 other all over the country every single month. And that's when my wife, who had already left when my daughter came about, left running hospitals. I said, you got to come home. I mean, come on. And by then, yes, she was running her own whole hospital in Houston. And I'm like, it's too much stress, too much. We're moving back and forth. So she had been managing the rent houses that this business's money would allow us to buy. That's where we chose to invest. And I'm like, I can't do this if you don't help me. And so what she did at that time, and I'd kind of gotten active, well, actually very active in industry circles, like in the legislation regarding it, these trade associations. So now I had this new network of people. And since I was an advisor to the executive board of that group at that time, I knew I could work with these guys and they would try to do a good job for me. And so we started shipping these assignments out all over the country and getting them done. And generally well-meaning customers, because, you know, people have hard times. Anything that relies on wheels and perfect operational ability to go down the highway is going to have trouble. It's hard. And so for those type of guys, these guys could solve those accounts, but you always had these hard accounts, or they wouldn't complete them in a geographic locale, so assignments would pile up. So then what I morphed into was I would wait for that to happen. Ultimately, it's my name, it's my company, and I would I'd fly in or drive in and clean it up.
That's your thing.
Yeah. So, and then that was a great run. That was several years there. Then, am I keeping you from asking any questions?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay. So yeah.
So how far are we from today at this point?
A long ways.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, really where that went was that probably went up to about the end of 2010, 11, and then everything, the bottom dropped out.
Yeah.
And you're like, how did the bottom drop out? There was literally nothing else to repossess at that time, because in 2008, 7 to 8, we had this declared financial crisis. You remember that?
Yeah. I lived through it. Yeah.
So a lot of it predicated on crazy loans done in California.
Yeah. Yeah, it did.
And I mean, man. So, and what would they call those damn things? Oh man, they have an acronym, and on Wall Street for them. I don't know, all these derivatives, but something on high risk housing. I don't know. But I was already seeing it out there because before that was declared, man, I was repoing businesses left and right, Mike. I was repoing equipment left and right. And I was like, what I didn't know at that time when they gave me that big contract was for Key Bank, the reason they agreed to that amount, I was so dumb still. I mean, you learn every day. I was just happy to do a job really well and execute it and say, look, I did it for you.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.